What are the Akashic Records? And why would we even need to look into these so-called Akashic Records? In this week's podcast, myself and Rob are going to look into all of this and tell you our view on what the Akashic Records are. Now, first of all, Rob and I never felt like we needed to call them Akashic Records, but the reason we do call it that is because then everybody understands partly what we're talking about. But the word Akash is not English, of course, that comes as no surprise. It's a Sanskrit word for ether, space, or sky, or atmosphere. So basically, it's just what's out there in the ether, or so we think. But in actual fact, what Rob and I really have learned, even through training with views on Akashic Records, is more that the Akashic Record comes from within. That's our slant on it. So if you look at Akashic Records, what is it? A repository, a database, if you like, of wisdom. Some people would talk about it being a library. And therefore, this library does feel like it's out there. It's beyond our inner, our inner field, our own field. Because I don't know if you like you, Rob, but that's how I learned. It's in
Yeah.
this library. Go to this library, open the doors, and you're going to
hmm
see it there. Is that the same as you when I first
Absolutely.
started
This great, big,
training?
fabulous
Yeah.
library, like something out of Hogwarts.
Yes.
And there
Yes.
was the book of you,
Yes.
which you
Yes.
could read or write anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, that's not bad
It's not, but
imagery.
you can do
It's
it
an
that way.
old-fashioned imagery, isn't it?
Yes.
I prefer to see it now as just a massive computer system, a hard
Yes.
drive, in which you are born with. It's in your DNA. It's wired
Yeah.
into you. So all the records of you, every possibility of you,
Mm.
is already within you. And you have the ability to access it just as you can walk into a library and take a book off a shelf.
Mm.
You can walk into your own reality and take the book out or the chip out, and you can read it and you can
Mm.
change it.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's very much part of who you are,
Mhm.
both biologically, in that it is in your body, in your DNA,
Yes.
and spiritually. They
Yes. Yeah.
coexist.
Yeah. Well, the DNA, we understand it, Rob, don't we? That it's not just what a physical thing.
Yeah,
DNA can stem from, we know the DNA is written from, it's coded from your galactic version of you. It's coded from, let's call it past lives, just to make it
yeah,
easier. But it's also coded with future lives because what we know is everything has already been written. So imagine that. So when we go into what can it be used for? What can the Akashic Records be used for? We have that old adage, yes, of being able to clear blocks. So any blocks that you have usually comes from, we'll say from a childhood memory, but it can
mm,
also come from these other aspects of yourself. So yeah, there's that old thing, Rob, isn't it? That I've said if you spill a glass of water on the
yeah,
floor when you're six
yeah,
years old and nothing happens, it just spills and you mop it up, it's absolutely fine. Not really created an Akashic record to change your life or anything, not really stamped in that fabric of time, that moment, and you hardly remember it. But if you spill a glass of water and some figure of authority, might be a parent or even a teacher if you're doing it at school, comes up to you and says, "Oh, for goodness sake, Julie, you are always so clumsy. Why have you done that? Really, you're fit for nothing." And they might be joking and might not, but a 6 year old takes it on board,
yeah,
it's very serious, and that entangles, and that story entangles into the DNA written for you. And what happens is with that DNA, when we look into that, we see it as a projector in a cinema, don't we? So that's how we can get it out. Projector on a cinema. So one of the other
Yeah,
things you'll see or hear people say is look out as if you're looking at a huge projector, a huge cinema screen, and what's on that screen. And it just stamps it in the fabric of time. So you had a
yeah.
story, didn't you, Rob, with it? Like you
That's the
can
silliest thing.
remember it, you can remember it so well, and that's
I
what
remember it.
else happens with,
Yeah,
with the Akashic. Yeah.
it could have happened this morning. It's
Yes.
that vivid. It matters not at all. I
Yes.
must have been, I don't know, 10, and
Yeah.
I don't even know what I was doing, but I opened a can of coral paint, a large can of coral paint, and managed in the process to spill it all over myself and all over the floor. Outside, luckily, but all over the veranda. Good old South African house with verandas front
Yeah.
and back. And I made an almighty mess. And when my parents got home, I was in a lot of trouble
Yes.
because there was coral enamel paint all over. And so what that I spilt coral paint? Who could possibly care less? It got cleaned up, wasn't the end of the world. I don't think anybody, I think my parents probably found it more amusing than they let on at the time. But it still sits with me. And I still
Yeah.
don't like the color coral. Don't
Yes.
like it at all.
Yes.
And I have to ask them, why does it sit with me?
Mm.
But it obviously
Mm.
creates some kind of shockwave in my own Akashic record that just marked that moment and keeps it present, even though it doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
can't I can't trace back any feeling of inadequacy or anything from
Mm.
it. I just recall spilling paint and getting into trouble. But I recall it with such vividness that it could
Mm.
have been this morning or yesterday.
Mm. And that's how we know that
Mm.
it's almost like a time doesn't exist. It's one way we know.
Yeah,
There's lots. I'm sure the audience can, tell, can think back of a memory that just feels like it was yesterday, good or bad, whether
everyone.
that's traumatic or not
Yeah.
traumatic, it still stamps it. And it's not all. So Akashic is not all just about the things that are bad that are done to you. And again, we
Mm.
want to make that clear that it's not just about, oh, that's stamped in the fabric of time that, Julie, you were fit for nothing. It
Yeah.
sometimes is it just is something that is makes a lot of difference to your life, but you don't always know in what way. As Rob said, you see how Rob said, I don't like coral. That's
Still
different.
don't like
It don't
coral.
really make any difference. You can just paint something different. If like water, it might be that you don't like swimming or something like that because you just have association that water's bad. And it might be that because it became a trauma if you spill water and then you were told, that, something bad happened from you spilling water. All the stories that you give yourself, that is, the main time that we look at Akashic Records because, of course, you can collapse it. So there are some Akashic Records that we just remember, not traumatic, but something that we remember as yesterday, but others that we are starting to look at in terms of clearing to go, do you know what? Yeah, I want to change that. So this is where it's really good to view it as if you've got your DNA with a project, as a projector in the cinema, and you're viewing it on a screen and going, yeah, I don't like being a victim of what happened there. So when I spilt the water, this didn't happen to me, but it was an easy way. It was an easy one to say. So when you spill water and you're told you're not good for anything, stop associating with it, and you can change and rewrite that script so that it's not removing it completely. Obviously, remember what it's doing is changing your perception of it. It's changing you from being a victim of some trauma into, oh, well, it really means nothing. I can remember it, but it just means nothing. And that's the bit that changes your life. So you don't have to be you're not fit for anything into
Yeah.
I can do anything, or however you want to, you start flipping things over, you start flipping your mindset over to, do you know what, that just did not mean a thing to me. So it's
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah. I'm minded. There's a lot of stuff out there about near-death experiences and the
Mm,
question of a
mm,
life review when you pass from this life
yes.
back to your energy that you are shown.
Mm.
And that for me is an Akashic record catch up
Yes,
where you
absolutely.
are allowed to see your life against the potential of your life and
Yeah.
understand what
Mm.
you did or didn't achieve.
Yeah.
and what you can maybe achieve next time you incarnate, however you choose to incarnate. And it's not done from a place of judgment.
No,
So
that's the
it's not the
thing.
wrath of
Mm,
God saying you didn't do this or you did do this. It's your chance to go, oh, okay, I see where that went and didn't go. I get it, so I can do that next time.
mm,
And that's
mm.
all stored in you.
Yeah. And that's the thing about even looking at Akashic Records, even live, even sort of before you die and you
Yeah,
want to check your records. One thing you've got to do is become the neutral observer. Because
yeah.
what happens is people tend to overfabricate the stories. So there we go. You'll see, I might say, I always take the analogy of, or the story of, I've seen a few people as witches. But what we've got to do is remember the interpretation because even though they might have a memory of being a witch, it might not be them. It might be just part of an Akashic record that's created some sort of trauma, and you've got to be very careful how you're interpreting what you're seeing, hearing, viewing. And what people tend to do is start looking into a record and thinking, oh, I see this on a screen. And then they start the interpretation comes out of ego, comes out of being
Yeah.
drama. Oh, if I was a witch, I bet I was drowned or I bet I was burnt on the stake. And most witches were hanged anyway. So
Mm.
that's not necessarily true. And we've got to find out, remembering that we only get shown what's a priority, as I would see it. Why are they showing you that? Why are they showing that aim of a witch? It could just be to understand good and bad. It could just be to understand what's happening in our life at the moment without going into the drama of what happened. So you've really got to understand being the neutral observer and sit back, step back when you are
Yeah,
looking at your record. Otherwise, you're just going to make it all up, and more stories are going to come in, not of that specific pinpoint. And this is what I'm trying to say about fabric atomic. It creates almost like a little pin, pin on a map,
yeah,
specific location in the space. And that's what they're talking about when they're talking about Akashic. It's a yeah, just a pinpoint of what, but you can change it. But you're just changing it from saying, oh, do you know what? Yeah, let's rewrite it. Let's collapse that record in terms of
yeah.
the feelings, the emotions, and the trauma around it. That's what you're doing. So you're rewriting it into something else to change what you're doing now, to change your current now moments, because that's all there is.
Absolutely. If I were
Yeah.
to write a document and put a paragraph in I didn't like,
Mm,
I would go back and edit it out
yeah.
or rewrite
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And you have that
Exactly.
potential to do the same thing to your
Yeah.
record.
Mm,
Go in and change it.
mm.
Understand what didn't work and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like we always say we download, we get downloads from,
Yes.
from
Yeah.
energy. And we do. The matrix is an energetic existence.
Yes.
And we're energetic beings within that. And we are continually being given upgrades, downgrades,
Mm.
downloads. We should say upgrades, I think. It sounds better.
Yes. It's
But in
nice.
terms of modern computer parlance, they are
Yeah.
downloads
Mm.
because we're being given a new level, a new notch in our belt of understanding and thinking
Mm.
and
Mm.
ability. And we get those all the time. So we
Mm.
need to use them. Take the
Yeah.
energy, run with the energy, absorb your upgrades, and make sure that you recognize those upgrades in your Akashic records and fix them there
Mm.
because they aren't going to go away. They're in it, they're in your blueprint,
Yes. Oh, nice.
and you can reject them, but they're still in the record.
Mm.
So you need
Mm.
to learn to accept what is in your record
Mm.
and work with it or change it. What do you
Mm.
think about that?
Yeah, well, that's obviously, we've spoken about a reason to view the Akashic
Mm,
Records is to clear, but the other reason is to work on your purpose.
yeah,
As Rob and I have still said, it's not something that, you'd ask the guides, external guides, and, oh, what's my purpose? It's going to download like that. You're in your purpose all the time, so it's going to change all the time. But what you can do with the Akashic Records, as it were, is tune into who you are as a multidimensional self. What I will say here is also, can we view the Akashic records of somebody else as well as ourselves? And Rob and I will say there's a yes and no about
mm,
this. If you're viewing the Akashic Records because you want to look at some famous celebrity or the royal family, or a specific person, you want to know the Akashic record of Ethel down the road because she's not she's not very nice to you. No, that is a no-no. Once again, you will be intruding on their energy, and it's highly unlikely that you would get their information. So it's only when somebody invites you in, so you're working with somebody as a client, or that you're working with the collective. So we're looking at Akashic Records from a collective point of view. It's almost as if we're saying this is in the public domain. So it's almost like the public library rather than your internal library or your internal database, because we have DNA that shapes us, that almost the physical DNA that says this is Julie, this is Rob, and creates that separation. But we also have DNA that is the part of the, let's say, oneness. That's the part of the oneness as Julie as a multidimensional self. So Julie has other things, I don't know, Palladian, and had this life and that life as human, and has future lives as human because DNA can tap in to what we would class as the future. Everything is already written in our DNA, but obviously we can change it. Every possibility, every eventuality. This is what we're talking about. The infinite potential is all written in the DNA. Whether or not we use that and have it in our reality now is up to us. But if I say, for instance, if I wanted it to look at my purpose or look into more, the meaning of life or how quantum physics relates to metaphysics and spirituality, because that's what a lot of us are doing now. And it's amazing how the quantum physics side, as much as I'll research in the 3D, and then the guide, or I'm guided to more quantum physics works, what I'm doing there is tapping into the Akashic of what's already been written in what I'm perceiving, in what I want to find.
Yeah.
So I can go to a higher consciousness to tap into the Akashic Records to say, show me something about quantum physics, show me about entanglement, show me, all the information that I need. And they won't give it all, they'll just give it, they'll drip feed it. But show me how Albert Einstein, for instance, show me all his information, or show me Pythagoras. And I remember thinking, well, I've heard about people, this is the mistake we can make. I've heard about people where you can say, oh, I'll tap into Albert Einstein's consciousness because he downloaded all this beautiful information to help humanity. Pythagoras and all his information to help humanity very, very long time ago. And I tapped in this morning with my guides to say, can you tell me how to do that? And I had some guides from a very, very high, much higher realm than I'm used to, lovely, was saying, why would you even want to do that when you can tap into what they did? And all they did was tap into the higher consciousness, tap into a higher realm of just ether and information and wisdom that is there for the keep
Yeah.
it for hours to keep, hours to tell a different story, if you like, hours to find out our true blueprint rather than the false blueprint that we keep plugging into with the matrix and distorting our true self. I thought for me that was a bit of a mind blower that of course I don't need to tap into who Albert Einstein was and get all of his information. Of course we can read, it's all out there in the public domain, we can read what he's done. But remember, him and all the other great minds have only tapped in to exactly the same consciousness, high consciousness, Akashic records that we can also tap into. Maybe we can't do all the work, all the 3D work that they've done because it depends on our perception on life, experience, knowledge, all the things we've learned. So it's as much as we've got with that. But I was quite impressed, Rob, with
You were.
knowing that, yeah, you can look at
Yeah, of
the Akashic records for the collective as well, in that way, in the same way.
course you can. I mean, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Hamlet already existed. The work
Yes.
existed. Shakespeare was the downloader into 3D
Yes.
to give us this piece of writing about the human condition, which has served as well as an important guideline
Absolutely.
on many
Absolutely.
things. But you
Mm,
can write Hamlet. You don't
mm,
want to write the same one, do you? It's done.
yeah.
Shakespeare did that, so you write
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
There's no point in going in to the great minds that have existed and do exist and will exist and trying to replicate their work.
Mm,
What are you getting out of it? Why are you
mm,
not producing something new, your own work? That's what you're here to do. It's not copy, it's to create.
mm. Create is good.
Yeah, so we need to create our own things.
Mm,
And yes, it might be fascinating to know what Shakespeare was thinking when he wrote Hamlet,
hmm
but I'm not going to learn much from it. I would just be moderately interested. But what's more important is what would I like to write about? If I were to go to the theatre and see a play that was not Hamlet, what would I want it to be? And why aren't I writing it? And you extrapolate that across any kind of thinking you want, any kind of great mind you want to think.
mm. Because that's
You know?
lovely. You've hit the nail on the head of what else I got is that why would you want to do the limitation of
Yeah,
Albert Einstein? Because of course he couldn't think of everything because of course his time as
finite.
humans
Mm.
his time went. Why aren't we looking at his work but then expanding on it? So you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. We are humans here to have creativity. We say everything is already written, but we haven't accessed it all yet. So that's what Rob's saying is access, download, upgrade, all of this from the higher consciousness or the Akashic Records or whatever you want to call it, from the ether there, that all the technology as well is already written. All the new technology that we can get from the higher consciousness, there's more to come, but it hasn't sat yet, it hasn't fed through into 3D. And the more creative we are, the more we raise our consciousness. That's why we're accelerating, and that's what we can end up getting more and more, using more of our creativity to get in more information. And this is why there are those that want us to keep small, because then we can't be
yeah,
creative. If we're struggling with something, if we're working in lack of scarcity, we can't also be creative as much. So it's just remembering that. So there's these wonderful things we can tap into to be creative. And first of all, we need to make sure that we are of pure, raise our consciousness
yeah,
pure as we can be. And that's another reminder with everything that, yeah, that is, using the records to one, help us heal, to help us clear, and then two, to help us be more creative. So
yeah.
there's just another one that's a vast array of everything and nothingness with it in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could talk about this for many, many hours, I think,
Yeah,
and still
yeah,
not get to the bottom of it.
yeah, to
But the
the end of
fact
it.
is, you contain this immense resource
Yeah.
and you really need to start using it
Yes. Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
how you will fulfill your potential.
Yeah. This is how you know your
Yeah,
purpose. Anybody asking,
yeah,
oh, what's the point of life? What's the purpose?
yeah.
All
It's
out
how
there
you'll
for
see
you.
past limitation, isn't it?
Yes,
So if I go
definitely.
back to the
Yes.
analogy of Hamlet and Shakespeare, if you went to school and you were taught Hamlet,
Mm.
you were taught that Hamlet had a certain parameter of meanings. You
Yeah.
were not taught that you could write your own version of Hamlet, or that you have the
Absolutely.
potential to write something this brilliant and this amazing that will
Yes.
last for centuries of Earth time. That was never the question. And if you went to the theatre to see a production of Hamlet, you might evaluate how it worked based on that script, not on what could I do that is this illuminating, this valuable for humanity.
Yeah.
So we are taught to stick within the limits of what the great minds have taught us,
Mm.
not to
Mm.
expand and carry on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, when a mind does break through and comes up with something new and extraordinary, then we tend to go, oh, amazing. I'll just follow that then.
Yeah.
Instead of
Instead of
pushing
looking
again
away.
our boundaries out
Mm.
and thinking, that's interesting, but I think this.
Yeah. And that's pure
Yeah.
genius, Rob. You saying that as well. Pure genius to help
Well, what can
people
I say, Julie?
understand. You are genius.
Takes
You
one
are
to know
genius.
one.
Yeah, it's knowing that. That's what we should, like you
Yeah.
say, this is what we should be taught in schools. Everybody
Yeah,
has access. It's the same consciousness. It's the same Akashic records.
yeah,
Some of them we could say they're your internal records, but there's that vast array of everything that is not is basically unseen at the moment, but is there. It's just unseen by the 3D human mind.
yeah,
But more and more, this is what we're waking up to. As all the things that Rob has just said, that you can create as much as all these great minds can. They accessed exactly the same as what
yeah.
you can access to be creative. And this is why myself and Rob, why we help clients, why we help ourselves, and why we have to keep reminding ourselves that all the other distractions we have are just part of, let's say, the false matrix that keep us small. All the things where we say, well, I can't be as good as somebody. I could never be as good as Shakespeare. I could never be as good as Albert Einstein. It's not being as good as, it's being in your own person.
Yeah,
You don't want to be the same as them. You want to be your own person, including all the other aspects of yourself. The key is bringing those into play, and that's what helps you as a human in this reality that we've got, and helps
yeah,
to shift yourself and shift the collective consciousness, because that's what helps as well with the Akashic records. You help yourself, it ripples out, and then you can help others when you have that more of an understanding of how to download and how to bring things through. Yeah.
indeed. I think we'll
Hmm.
revisit this at some point, but that's
Yeah, there's
probably
more. Yeah,
profound enough for now.
definitely. It's as much as we wanted to say for now, isn't it,
Yeah,
Rob?
I think
Yeah,
so.
and
I
you
think
could
so.
go into it forever.
So if you
It's,
have listened to this, let it
yeah,
filter down and let us know what you think,
yeah,
because you might have a whole different take on it.
yeah, and that's
It'd be good to
brilliant.
hear
That's
it.
great.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, so with that, with all that in mind, lovely. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as we've enjoyed doing it. Take care for now, and we'll see you next week.
I know.